Good morning.
Good morning.
I guess in the history of communist Cuba, we've never seen anything like these protests. What do you think has caused this?
Well, I think what's caused it is that people want a better future. They don't see any hope under the existing regime. They know the regime has been lying to them for 62 years. It really began when people in Cuba got access to the internet. They were able to read things from abroad, communicate with people from abroad, and communicate with each other. And they quickly realized that the only thing standing in the way between them and the freedom to express themselves and the opportunity to build their own life and their own dreams was a regime that didn't allow them because it wants to control them. So that's really what changed. And you say we haven't seen anything like this in 62 years. It's true, because how this began, a lot of people don't realize how this began was a protest in one city that was broadcast live on Facebook Live, and suddenly it spread to over 52 by the end of the day. So I don't think we've seen that in many places in the world. We've certainly never seen that in Cuba.
You've been talking about broadcasting it on social media and with the internet. From what we understand, they've shut it down there. How important is it to get the internet back going for us to be able to see what's going on and for us to be able to communicate with families down there?
Well, the reason why it's really important is because it's the way that people inside of Cuba can share with the world what's going on, can express themselves so that others on the island and those abroad can hear them, so they can learn information about what's happening around the world and not have to rely on state-owned media. It's empowering, and that's the role that's played everywhere. It's why, this is why tyrannical places like China have a great firewall and control what people can see and read. And again, I mean, it's ironic that the leaders of that regime use Twitter all day long and social media all day long to promote and put out their statements, but they restrict the right of the people to have access to social media, especially in times of conflict or crisis. So I think it's critically important that we provide, that we do everything we can to provide free, unfettered access to the internet. And there's technology that allows us to do that. We've been working on it for a while. Under the previous administration, it's time to restart it and put it on hyperspeed.
What else? What else can the U.S. do now to help these people?
Well, one of the things is we need to begin to isolate the regime by calling attention to its lack of legitimacy. That's why last week I asked President Biden, early last week, I asked President Biden to order the Secretary of State to convene the Organization of American States so that they can issue not just a condemnation of what's happening in Cuba, but to ask the Inter-American Human Rights Commission to travel to Cuba and begin to document these human rights abuses. At the same time, you can use that OAS process to convene an emergency meeting of the Security Council of the United Nations. Again, obviously Russia and China are going to veto everything, but what's important here is to say, look, it doesn't matter what your ideology is. Even if you happen to be a socialist leader of some other country, you are not a legitimate government. Yeah. You are not a legitimate regime when you do this to your own people, like what they've done. They have murdered people, they've abducted people in the middle of the night, they have forced children to go out and repress people. You lose your legitimacy, and more countries need to say that.
What do you say to to all of us really, but especially to Cuban Americans living here in this country? What can we do at this point to help this situation there?
I think the first thing we have to do is be an echo for the voices of the people inside of Cuba. This is their cause. This is their future. This is their country. And our job is to be supportive of them, to do what we can, like internet access, like gaining international condemnation and isolation of that regime. Because that stuff matters. I mean, there are people inside the regime that when they see that condemnation will realize that the system they serve has lost its legitimacy to govern. At the same time, we have to make sure that this issue doesn't just go away, that it doesn't just disappear, because that's what happens, nowadays. Something happens, It gets covered for a week or so, and then we move on. We've got to continue to be their voice, and every time they send us messages, every time they put out videos, we've got to make sure that we show it to the world and we continue to spread it, that we use our freedom to help them gain theirs.
Senator, good to talk to you as always. Thank you. I know you're watching this closely. I know it's near and dear to your heart, and we'll stay with you on this and report it as much as we can, okay? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Goodbye.